Hello, and thank you for coming to the McWaters Effect. I'm your host, Matt. Today we're going to be talking about Harry Truman and UFOs. But first, I need you to go down, hit like, and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Now let's get on with the show. Not only was Harry Truman the 33rd president and the president who presided over the ending of World War II, but he was also the first president that ever had to deal with the UFO phenomenon publicly. There may have been sightings or UFO crashes before, but nothing like Truman had to deal with publicly. More importantly, Truman was the first president who had to deal with the public relations problem that went along with the UFO phenomenon. Now, I have news articles and stuff like that to go over in the story, but first I want you to watch a video about Truman actually admitting on camera about UFOs over DC.
They caused such panic that President Truman was forced to speak about them publicly. In a few short years, UFOs had reached the highest office in the land.
Oh yes, we discussed it at every conference that we had with the military. There's always things like that going on. Flying saucers, and they've had other things, if I'm not mistaken.
Here's a story here. In 1952, flying saucers over Washington sent the press into a frenzy. UFO reports in the Capitol airspace sent headlines blaring across the nation about disc, what's-its, and mysterious lights. That is actually 100% true. I got 2 articles from newspapers, copies of it, that actually show that that was the case. They published this in newspapers. Now, there's over 24 newspapers that actually published this story in their newspaper, and it was in the front page. Okay, here you go. Here's the 2 articles. The first one, saucer swarm over Capitol, and radar spots flying saucers in the backyard of the nation's capital. Now, what's interesting is that the radar caught them, and that's military radar. And this is 1952, so the radar is not as good as the radar we have now. That's crazy. Now, here's an article talked about where Harry S. Truman was angered by the UFO flyby. Harry Truman was president of the United States when Kenneth Arnold saw flying saucers over the state of Washington, ushering the modern era of the UFO sighting. He was president when the Roswell occurred in 1947. He was president in 1952 when the UFOs buzzed Washington, D.C. over consecutive days. Harry Truman was familiar with UFOs, obviously. Now, here's the second part of the same story. It was the UFO flybys over D.C. that forced Truman to act. There were unknown, saucer-shaped craft seen zooming over the White House, the Pentagon, and the Capitol building. Newspaper headlines shouted about the sightings, and the public was talking about them. And some newspapers, the front page UFO story, pushed articles about the Democratic National Convention to page 2. Truman responded out of frustration. He gave the order, shoot him down. Several well-known scientists, including Albert Einstein, heard about the order and urged him to rescind it. Truman did, around the time that the UFO sightings also ceased. Okay, you know what I find crazy? He thought it'd be a good idea to try to shoot one of these things down, like we would have the technology to do so at the time. Okay, now it's time of the show where I give my opinion. Well, first thing, guys, this is what actually started Project Blue Book, and it's actually what started also the Majestic 12. Or MJ-12. Now, MJ-12 is actually a classified organization, and supposedly they never existed. But of course, there's been people that are part of it that talk about it. So it is something that the government said doesn't exist. It's something that UFO ufologists say exists, and it's some people that were a part of it said existed. I don't know yet. There's been a few documents that actually mentioned their name from the government. So it's one of those things where it's, in my opinion, there's pretty good evidence that it existed. But Justice 12 was known for not investigating it, but there were a group that actually looked into whether or not they should tell the American people and whether or not there'd be mass hysteria. And they're the ones that actually pushed Project Blue Book to explain away most of the sightings, and also try, if they couldn't explain it, make up an explanation to make it plausible so they could tell them it's all just natural phenomenon. But really, what's the craziest thing about this story? not only did politicians, media, people in general, police officers, so on and so forth, see these flying saucers in DC, but they caught the stuff on radar. How do you explain that away? Not only that, it was happening over several days. And he actually gave an order to shoot them down. And this is something majority of people that are normal people out there that are just going 9 to 5 work and don't even know about. And the reason they have kept it quiet, which I don't know how they have, but they have, because I didn't even know that much about it until I decided to start looking stuff up about Harry Truman, that this happened. And the reason they have been able to do that is because they explain things away to being a weather balloon or a pocket of gas going in there and exploding and causing lights and a whole bunch of other nonsense. This is something you can't explain. It's crazy shit. That's all I'm saying. It's the craziest thing I ever heard. And then you got the president who actually admits it on camera. All right, guys, now we're at the quote of the day, and I decided to do Harry S. Truman. My choice in early life was either to be a piano player in a whorehouse or a politician. Tell you the truth, there's hardly a difference. End quote. All right, guys, if you like the show, please hit like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Peace.